The bank was full that Thursday morning in Lagos. The air was heavy and hot. People were talking, shuffling, waiting in long lines. Tosin, 29, stood quietly beside her mother, Mrs. Adeyemi, and her older sister, Tola. They were there to sort out their late father's account. Tosin stayed silent, watching her mother and sister talk to the banker. She never felt like she belonged in moments like this. Her mother always trusted Tola to handle things. The banker looked at the computer, then at the documents in front of him. His face changed, confusion. He looked at them again, then slowly turned to Tosin. "Excuse me," he said softly. "According to these instructions, Miss Tosin Adeyemi needs to sign for the transfer." The room seemed to stop. Tosin blinked, unsure she heard him right. Her mother's face went pale. "No," Mrs. Adeyemi said quickly, her voice shaking. "That must be wrong. It should be Tola's signature." But the banker shook his head and turned the document for Tosin to see. Her name was clearly written there, her late father's handwriting. Tola's eyes widened. "This doesn't make sense," she said under her breath, staring at Tosin. The banker slid the form forward. Tosin's heart raced. Her fingers trembled as she held the pen. The room felt smaller, everyone's eyes on her. She signed. The banker smiled politely. "Congratulations, Miss Tosin Adeyemi," he said. "You're now the official account holder." The words hung in the air. Then came a gasp, a sharp, painful sound. Tosin turned just in time to see her mother's body go limp. Mrs. Adeyemi fell to the ground. "Mummy!" Tosin screamed. People rushed toward them. Someone shouted for water, another for a nurse. The crowd gathered around as Tosin knelt beside her mother, tears streaming down her face. "Please help her. Mummy, please," she cried, her voice breaking. Tola stood frozen, watching her mother's still body on the floor, her expression mixed with fear and confusion. The sounds in the room blurred, the noise of the crowd, the banker calling for help, the guards rushing in. Everything faded. Tosin could only hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Her world had shifted in seconds, from invisible to responsible, from ignored to holding everything her father left behind. As the scene slowly faded to silence, Tosin's voice echoed softly in the background. "All my life, they told me I wasn't the responsible one, that I couldn't be trusted. But that day, everything changed." Tosin grew up in her sister's shadow. Tola was the golden child, smart, organized, and always perfect in everything she did. She got top grades in school, had a good job, and made their mother proud. Everyone in the family called her responsible, disciplined, and the one who would go far. Tosin was different. She was the creative one, the dreamer. She loved drawing, designing, and imagining new things, but she often didn't finish what she started. Her mother used to sigh and say, "Tosin, you need to be more like your sister." Those words stayed with her for years. Their father, Mr. Adeyemi, was the only one who made Tosin feel seen. He never compared her to Tola. When her mother scolded her, he would quietly tell Tosin, "You don't have to be like anyone else. Just be yourself." He believed in her even when no one else did. Then 2 years ago he died suddenly from a heart attack. The house changed after that. The peace he brought was gone. Their mother became harder, stricter, and always spoke as if Tola was the only one capable of handling anything important. "Your father left responsibilities only Tola can handle," she would say. Those words hurt Tosin deeply, but she stayed silent. She didn't want to argue. She tried to rebuild her life in her own way. She worked as a freelance graphic designer from home, taking small jobs to survive. It wasn't easy. Some months she barely made enough to pay rent, but she preferred that over living under her mother's constant control. Meanwhile, Tola's life looked perfect. She worked at a multinational company, wore fancy clothes, drove a nice car, and often reminded everyone of her achievements. "You should learn from Tola," relatives would say at family gatherings. Tosin would just smile politely, pretending it didn't bother her. When the talk about their father's estate began, Tosin didn't expect much. Their father had left some savings and a few investments from his years as a civil engineer. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something meaningful. The family lawyer said both daughters needed to come to the bank together for verification. Tosin thought it was just a formality, but her mother had other plans. "Tola will handle everything," she said firmly. "You don't need to worry yourself with these things." Tosin nodded, pretending not to care, but deep inside, She felt invisible, like she always had. Still, something inside her whispered that she should go. The night before the bank visit, Tosin almost decided to stay home. She didn't want another moment of feeling small beside her sister. But something in her heart told her this time would be different. So the next morning, she dressed simply, took a deep breath, and went along with them, unaware that her life was about to change forever. After the collapse, Mrs. Adeyemi was rushed to the hospital. The ride there was a blur. Tosin sat in the back seat of the taxi, holding her mother's hand, whispering, "Please be okay, Mummy." Her sister, Tola, kept blaming her, saying, "You just had to sign that form, didn't you?" At the hospital, doctors took their mother inside while Tosin and Tola waited in the hallway. The air smelled of disinfectant and fear. Tosin's heart pounded as she sat on the hard bench, trying not to cry. A few minutes later, the family lawyer arrived. He looked serious but calm. He asked Tosin to step outside for a moment. She followed him to a quiet corner near the hospital garden. Without saying much, he handed her a brown envelope. "Your father asked me to give you this at the right time," he said softly. Tosin hesitated. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, her father's familiar neat writing. She could almost hear his gentle voice as she read. "If you're reading this, Tosin, it means I trusted you to carry the family's future. Not because you're perfect, but because you understand pain. You know what it means to be unseen, and that makes you kind. The inheritance is in your name. Use it wisely. Build something beautiful, and don't let anyone make you feel small again." Tears rolled down Tosin's cheeks. Her father had changed the documents himself before he died. He had chosen her, the daughter everyone thought was weak. As she held the letter close, flashes of memory filled her mind. Late nights when her father would come to her room after her mother's harsh words, pat her shoulder, and say, "One day, you'll surprise them all." She never understood what he meant until now. Tola suddenly appeared, her voice sharp. "What's that you're holding?" Tosin quickly wiped her tears. "It's from Daddy," she said quietly. Tola grabbed the letter and skimmed through it. Her eyes grew wide with anger. "This can't be real. You must have forged it." "I didn't," Tosin whispered, her voice trembling. "The lawyer gave it to me." Tola turned to the lawyer. "Tell her she can't just take everything. My mother and we won't allow this." The lawyer sighed. "I am sorry, Toula. Your father changed the account details himself before he passed. It's all legal. I have the signed documents to prove it." Tola's face burned with rage. "You think you can steal from this family, Tosin? You've always been jealous." Her shouting drew the attention of hospital security. Tosin stood frozen as Tola called someone on her phone, trying to block Tosin's access to the account. A few minutes later, the police showed up, asking questions. But after checking the documents, they confirmed everything was official. Tosin hadn't done anything wrong. When the officers left, the hallway fell silent again. Tola sat down, breathing heavily, tears of frustration in her eyes. Tosin stood there, holding her father's letter close to her chest. She didn't feel powerful, only shocked and heartbroken. But deep inside, she also felt something new: strength. For the first time in her life, Tosin realized that her father had seen her worth when no one else did. And now, whether she wanted it or not, she held the key to her family's future. When Mrs. Adeyemi finally came home from the hospital, the house was silent. She didn't speak to Tosin at all. Whenever Tosin tried to help or say something, her mother would look away as if she wasn't even there. The pain in that silence was worse than shouting. Relatives began to talk. Word spread quickly that Tosin had betrayed her sister and stolen the inheritance. Some of them stopped calling. Others sent hurtful messages like, "You should have left it for Tola. You know your mother's health is weak." Tosin didn't know how to defend herself. She hadn't done anything wrong, yet she was being treated like a thief. Each night, she cried quietly in her room, replaying everything in her head: the bank scene, her mother's collapse, her father's letter. Tola made things worse. She began visiting family friends, twisting the story. Tosin took advantage of Mum's illness, she said. She made herself the owner of Dad's account. We don't even know how she did it. Soon, those lies spread everywhere. People began to look at Tosin differently. Then the messages started coming. Unknown numbers would text her things like, "You'll regret this," and "Return what's not yours." At first, Tosin ignored them, but as they became more frequent, she grew afraid to check her phone. Despite all this, Tosin tried to stay calm. She reminded herself of her father's words. You understand pain. That's why you'll build something beautiful. One night, while cleaning her father's old study, she opened a drawer she had never touched before. Inside, she found a small black notebook, his journal. Her hands shook as she opened it. The pages were filled with his handwriting, full of thoughts and little reminders. Then she saw a folded note tucked between 2 pages. It read, "Funds reserved for Tosin's business. She will build what I couldn't." Next to it were several old receipts and bank records. Tears filled her eyes. The money wasn't just an inheritance. It was meant for her future, for her dream. Her father had believed in her talent enough to save for it. That night, Tosin made a decision. She would stop hiding. She would stop feeling guilty for something her father had chosen. She decided to use part of the money to start a small design studio. Something she could build in his honor. Days turned into weeks. Tosin found a small space to rent, cleaned it up, painted the walls herself, and set up her desk with her old laptop. She called it a father's promise. Work gave her peace. She designed business logos and posters for small shops around Lagos. Slowly, she began to feel proud again. But her mother still refused to visit. When Tosin sent her money for medication, Mrs. Adeyemi sent it back. She wouldn't even answer Tosin's calls. The pain of rejection was deep, but Tosin kept going. Then one afternoon, she got a call from the bank. The manager sounded tense. "Miss Adeyemi, did you recently authorize a withdrawal from your account?" Tosin's heart skipped. "No," she said. It turned out that someone had tried to take a large amount of money using a fake signature. The bank had caught it on CCTV. The person was Tola. When Tosin saw the footage, her hands went cold. Her sister, the one everyone trusted, had tried to steal from her. The bank stopped the transaction immediately, and the lawyer was informed. That night, Tosin sat alone in her small studio, staring at the letter her father had written and the words in his journal. She realized her father must have known how things would turn out, how jealousy and greed could break their family apart. But he had also known something else, that Tosin would rise above it. Even though the pain was heavy, Tosin felt a quiet strength inside her. For the first time in her life, she wasn't living in her sister's shadow anymore. She was standing on her own, guided by her father's love and her own courage. Tola was arrested the next morning. The news spread quickly. Neighbors whispered, relatives called, and by evening, everyone in the family had heard. Tosin sat quietly in the small waiting room of the police station, her hands shaking as she tried to understand how things had reached this point. When Mrs. Adeyemi arrived, her eyes were swollen from crying. She looked at Tosin with anger and pain. "Are you happy now?" she shouted. "Your sister is in jail because of you. You've destroyed this family." Tosin stood up, tears already forming in her eyes. "Mummy, please." But her mother didn't let her speak. "I warned you. You brought shame to us. You took what wasn't yours and turned Tola into a criminal." Something inside Tosin broke. All the years of silence, all the insults and comparisons, all the pain she had buried, it finally came out. Her voice shook, but it was firm. "I didn't take anything from this family. You just never wanted to see me as more than a mistake." The words hung in the air. Even the police officers nearby stopped what they were doing for a moment. Mrs. Adeyemi froze, staring at Tosin as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Tosin wiped her tears and continued, her voice trembling. "You always loved Tola more. No matter what I did, it was never enough. Daddy believed in me, but you never even tried to." Mrs. Adeyemi opened her mouth to reply, but no words came. Just then, the family lawyer entered the station. He had come after being called by the police to verify the bank documents. Seeing the tense atmosphere, he gently stepped between them. "Mrs. Adeyemi," he said calmly, "there's something you need to know. Your husband never meant to cause this pain. He wanted both of his daughters to share everything equally." She looked up, confused. Then why did he give everything to Tosin? The lawyer sighed and opened his file. Because he discovered something before he passed away. Months before his death, Tola secretly withdrew 2 million naira from his account without permission. He found out, but he didn't tell anyone. He only told me. That's when he changed the documents, not to punish Tola, but to protect the family's future. For a moment, there was complete silence. Mrs. Adeyemi's lips trembled. "That's not possible," she whispered. She turned slowly to look at her older daughter through the cell bars. Tola. Tola avoided her mother's eyes, tears falling down her face. She didn't deny it. Mrs. Adeyemi took a shaky step back, her whole body trembling. The truth hit her like a storm. The daughter she had always defended, the one she had trusted the most, had been the one to betray her husband. Tosin stood quietly, tears streaming down her cheeks. She didn't feel victorious, only heartbroken. She looked at her mother one last time and said softly, "Daddy tried to protect us. He just didn't know he'd lose both of you in the process." Then she turned and walked toward the door. Her mother called her name weakly, but Tosin didn't stop. Outside, the evening sky was dim, filled with clouds. Tosin stood there for a moment, breathing deeply. The pain was heavy, but she felt something new, release. Inside the station, Mrs. Adeyemi sank to her knees, staring at Tola through tears. For the first time, she saw her golden child's flaws, and realized how blind love had cost her so much. Tosin walked away, her father's letter still in her bag, her heart broken but stronger than ever. She finally understood that sometimes the truth hurts, but it also sets you free. Months later, Tosin runs a small but growing design studio called A Father's Promise. The office is bright and simple, filled with colors, sketches, and laughter. She has 2 young designers working with her, both from low-income families. She teaches them patiently, just like her father once encouraged her. Each day, Tosin feels a quiet sense of pride. She's not rich, but she's finally doing something meaningful, something her father would have been proud of. Her business is slowly gaining clients, and her designs are appearing in shops and local magazines. Sometimes she still thinks about the past, the shouting, the police station, her mother's tears, but she no longer lets the pain control her. She's learned to breathe through it, to let go. Tola's case finally goes to court. The judge finds her guilty of forgery and fraud, but since it's her first offense, she is sentenced to community service instead of jail. Tosin attends one of the hearings quietly, sitting in the back. She feels no anger, only sadness. Tola had always been the one people admired, yet she had fallen because of greed and pride. After the trial, Tosin walks out without saying a word to her sister. She knows it's not her job to fix everything anymore. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. Weeks later, on a quiet afternoon, the doorbell at Tosin's studio rings. She looks up and freezes. Standing there is her mother, older, thinner, holding a walking stick. "Mummy," Tosin says softly. Mrs. Adeyemi steps inside, looking around the studio. Her eyes fill with tears as she sees the framed photo of Mr. Adeyemi on the wall, smiling proudly. "You made this place beautiful," she says, her voice shaky. "Just like your father said you would." Tosin doesn't know what to say. She helps her mother sit down. For a long time, neither of them speaks. Then Mrs. Adeyemi looks at her daughter and whispers, "I thought love meant control. But your father was right. You had the strength all along." Tears gather in Tosin's eyes. For years, she had waited to hear something like that. She nods slowly. "I forgive you, Mummy," she says gently. "But I need to live my life my way now." Her mother reaches for her hand. "That's all I want, to see you happy." They sit together for a few minutes, silently holding hands. It's not the same as before, but it's peaceful, a beginning of healing. Later, when her mother leaves, Tosin sits at her desk and looks at her father's old letter again. The paper is worn now, but the words still give her strength. "You understand pain. That's why you'll build something beautiful." She smiles through her tears. Around her, her young employees are working, laughing, dreaming, just as she once dreamed. Tosin finally feels free, not because everything is perfect, but because she has learned her worth. She has turned her pain into purpose, her silence into strength, and her father's love into a lasting promise. Tosin walked slowly through the quiet cemetery, holding a small envelope tightly in her hand. It was the first paycheck from her design studio, a symbol of all her hard work and hope. When she reached her father's grave, she knelt down and gently placed the envelope on the headstone. The sun was soft, and a gentle breeze moved the leaves around her. Looking at the name carved into the stone, she whispered, "You trusted me when no one else did. I'll never waste that." Far away, hidden behind a tree, Mrs. Adeyemi and Tola stood together, watching quietly. Their faces were filled with sadness and regret, but they said nothing. Tosin stood up and took a deep breath. She felt calm, whole, and free for the first time in a long while. As she walked away from the grave, her voice softly spoke in her mind. Sometimes, the person they least expect becomes the one who restores everything. The sky above was bright, full of promise. And Tosin stepped forward, ready for whatever came next. Hey friends, thanks for watching all the way through. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.